Hello and welcome to Wisdom Bites. Hope you're well. Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. And in today's pack program, I'm going to be having a look at the question that is on everybody's mind, and that is the current 4-year cycle going to be a traditional cycle, i.e. come to an abrupt end between now and the end of this year, or will we have, as many signs are pointing to, an extended cycle well into 2026 and even 2027? We'll also be having a look at the 60-day cycle to see exactly where we are in the cycle and whether we've now turned around and on our way and rally back to the upside. And as per usual, we'll have a rundown on the various timeframes for the Bitcoin price to have a look at exactly where we are and where we're heading and what the different timeframes are telling us. So if that sounds interesting, you know what to do. Get yourself a cup of tea, sit yourself down, eyes on the screen, and let's get cracking. But before I begin, the usual polite reminder, please remember everything in my videos is just for educational purposes, so please always do your wider research before you make any investment decisions or any swing trade decisions. Okay, I'm going to go straight into the main theme of the video, and that is to have a look at the pros and cons of where this particular Bitcoin bull market is going to end. Now, traditionally, we've been looking at Bitcoin through the eyes of the 4-year cycle, and many people look at it in many ways. But one of the main ways of looking at it, and what we really want to know is that will Bitcoin be following the traditional 4-year cycle trajectory and end between now and the end of 2025, or are there factors that are telling us that this is not going to be the case this time around? And everybody can make up their own mind. I'm just here to present the facts and what the debate is all about. So this is the traditional way of looking at Bitcoin and where we can expect it to end. So you can look at this in two different ways. We can go from the bottom of a cycle, i.e. the bottom of a bear market, to the bottom of the next bear market, or we can go from the top of the bull market to the next bull market top. So the first complete cycle that we had was back here in 2013, where we topped out. And if we have a look at from the top of there to the top of the next cycle, which was in December 2017, that was 49 months. And then the next cycle, which ended in November 2021, that was 47 months. So we've got 49 months and 47 months. And currently, where we've got our box drawn here is based on that traditional 4-year cycle end, which can be anywhere between October and December this year. So if we take it from the top here at 69,000, November 2021, 47 bars will take us to October. And this is where we're expecting the end of the bull market around that time. Anywhere September, October, November, even December is fine. So this is what's happened traditionally. These markets, until the ETFs came along, so this cycle was led by the retail side, this one was led by retail, and this one was led by the retail, up to the ETFs. And it seems to have been taken over by the corporates, and the ETFs and the corporate interest really grew from the passing of the legislation to allow the Bitcoin ETFs on the 11th of January 2024. So up to 2024, these were all retail led, and we would have expected up to that point at least that this market should end here around about the October, November, December 2025. However, everything changed from January 2024, and what we're really seeing is a different type of patterns developing with Bitcoin. For instance, if I give you an example, in all of the previous cycles, the previous high was not met before the halving. So the red lines here are the halvings in each of the 4-year cycles, and the price action didn't meet the previous all-time high before the halving. So the second cycle here, exactly the same. It was after the halving that we came up to the previous all-time high. Similar thing happened here. The all-time high of 20,000 in December 2017, we didn't break that until after the halving. But this time around, we actually broke the all-time high of that 69,000 before we got to the halving. So you knew there was something quite different going on, a different type of pattern, a different type of mindset, a different type of buyer. And this is why this has now changed to quite a bit. And it raises the question, is the cycle going to play out in a different way to what it has done previously? And the real question is, will the cycle play out differently to the previous cycles, or are we still going to be following the same 4-year cycle trajectory? Only time will tell, but we can see how things have actually really changed in the last year and a half. And what we've really seen is a change of emphasis in terms of the buyer. There's been a seismic shift between retail buyers of the past cycles to the corporate buyers of this current cycle. And they have a completely different mindset And will that mindset play out in a different way? So this is the top 100 public Bitcoin treasury companies. So obviously we've got Strategy here with over 628,000 Bitcoins. And if you've been following Strategy since they started buying Bitcoins in August 2020, you'll see that one thing they do, which is different from the retailers, is that they buy and hold. So retailers will buy Bitcoins and after making a bit of a profit, they'll get out. So they basically get involved with the buying and then the selling. They're not traditional holders. Whereas these companies have a different mindset. They're buying them to hold on to the Bitcoins. And as you know here at Wisdom Bites, we run a private member section with the Bitcoin miners like Marathon Digital Holdings. And having followed Marathon Digital Holdings since 2020, and since then they've hardly sold any at all. And since then they've been accumulating by their mining operations as well as their buying operations. So they're now currently at 50,000 Bitcoins. So if you look at all of these companies, these are not the companies that will buy and then sell. They are the buy and hold companies. So these top 100 companies, they're holding nearly 1 million Bitcoins. And what that's telling you is that there's 1 million less on the market to buy and sell. So while these companies are increasing the demand in terms of wanting to hold more and more, the supply is getting less and less and less, which is really a great fuel for markets to be going up rather than to be coming back down. So this may well change the dynamics of how the cycles play out. And as we know, many countries are now owning Bitcoin or with an intention to buy more Bitcoin as part of their Bitcoin treasury holdings. So what we've got here is the USA with the most number of Bitcoins at 198,000. Then we've got China at 194,000. And if you go down the list here, we have nearly 500,000 Bitcoins being held by countries with an intention to buy a lot more. So if you look at the total category now, outside of the retailers, you've got ETFs holding 1.4 million Bitcoins, countries holding 500,000, public companies holding nearly 1 million there, private companies at 426,000, and the Bitcoin mining companies at 107,000. So in total, you've now got over 3 million Bitcoins being held either in ETFs by countries or by public companies or private companies, etc. And that's 3.5 million less Bitcoins on the market than otherwise would have been the case with the intention of not selling. So what this really tells us is that in this particular cycle, this cycle is being dominated by completely different players. There's no retailers here, and also it's dominated by a different amount of money that's being involved here. And it really begs the question that if there are a different type of a buyer in the market and the amount of money is quite different, then surely their time frame of operations, instead of the 4-year cycle, they may well be operating in a completely different time frame to the ones that are being reflected by the 4-year cycle. So that is a real possibility, and it would make sense because some of these players seem to have only one intention, and that is to just accumulate. Whether they will see the 4-year cycle and use that as an opportunity to offload, which means that we'll have an almighty bear market, if these players should also look at the 4-year cycle and say, in October or November, that this is the time to sell. If they did that, then obviously we will still have the normal 4-year cycle. So we really don't know what their intentions are. This is the first data point which hasn't been completed yet. And we know that with MicroStrategy, they continued to hold throughout the bear market. So if they're a good example of what these players are going to do, then the chances are that they're not going to be offloading at the end of this year. And so far, retailers haven't even entered the market to the extent that we would have expected at this stage of the 4-year cycle. So there you have it. Everybody can make up their own mind. My job is to present the information as it is. We do have this new different element into the market in terms of the different players. And in the last 3 cycles, a similar thing was also being said, that this cycle was going to be different to this one, and this one here was going to be different to this one here, etc., etc. So it's always different every cycle, but maybe this time around, it really is different. And many of the traditionalists will say, well, don't fix it if it isn't broken. So the main thing is, as we've said right from the beginning, that it really helps to keep an open, fluid and flexible approach to everything here. We can look for signs of a topping out at this point, and we have our Bexit indicators to do so. Okay, before we move on to the time frame rundown with Bitcoin, I gave you these exact price levels for the next 14 days. So this video was 2 weeks ago on Monday, today, and I give you these targets for the end of the current 60-day cycle. So this is what's happened since then. So the first target I gave you was 112,000, which is exactly where we've come back down to. We've protruded a little bit down to 111,900. So it's about $100 below the 112K target. But this is where we're at. And when we look at Bitcoin through the eyes of the 60-day cycle, it may well be that we've now turned around and a reversal has taken place from exactly that point, from that target that we had. So hopefully we should now be seeing some sort of a reversal back towards the upside and testing the 123,000 one more time. So let's have a look through the time frames, exactly where Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin is telling us regarding the rest of the next 2 or 3 months. And we'll start off with the monthly time frame, and this is looking bullish with a candle close just 4 days ago, which gave us the highest monthly close in the history of Bitcoin, and that was exactly at 115,000. So we're really good to go. We've had 4 green candles, and I would be expecting now the current August candle, knowing that we're in the time frame that we are in the current 4-year cycle, you would expect this to be turning green and then the next one turning green as well. So let's see where that ends up. We still have the bearish divergence down here with the RSI making lower lows and the prices making the higher highs. However, when the prices start to move much faster and higher, then we would expect this to be invalidated with this bearish divergence. And if we move on to the weekly time frame, 2 weeks ago I mentioned this shooting star candle, and that we would be expecting with a higher probability with this signal here for the price to be consolidating and to be going downwards. So this is what's happened in the last 2 weeks. But as you'll see with the 60-day cycle, a reversal looks to be imminent. So the weekly time frame again is showing us a very good bullish sign, and the bearish candle may well have now played out. So the trajectory, as you can see, is quite strongly to the upside. So if we have a look at the daily time frame through the eyes of the 60-day cycle, and what we've got so far, we were expecting the current 60-day cycle to finish today, 4th of August. So as you can see currently on the 4th of August, we're on day 60. However, yesterday, what we got was the first tentative sign of the reversal of the end of the cycle and the beginning of a new one. And what we got was an outside bar engulfing bullish candle. And this is obviously one of the signs that Bitcoin is trying to put a bottom in to end the cycle and to start the new one. So the probability is that we started the new cycle yesterday on day 59, which is exactly when we started the previous cycle, which was on day 59 as well. So the question is, what can we expect? And really to confirm that, we need to get above this particular candle here, the high of which is at 116,054. So once we get above this at 116,000, that should confirm the start of the new cycle down here. And what we really can expect in this cycle coming up is probably the most important 60-day cycle within the 4-year Bitcoin cycle that we have. And that is because we are expecting some sort of a signal, some sort of a clue as to whether we're going to come to an end of the 4-year cycle, because what happens here in the next 2 months will determine whether we're going to be going into a bear market or a continuation into an extended cycle. So I've marked out the full cycle now going into October. So that means that the current 60-day cycle, if we have started it yesterday, will end on the 2nd of October, which is right in the time band where we would expect the completion of the 4-year cycle, or around about that time, October, November. And indeed, some people have targeted September this year to be the end of the current 4-year cycle. So let's see what happens. I think the main thing is to keep an open, fluid and flexible approach to the whole thing. So what I'm expecting in this cycle is that with the midpoint coming up around about the first week of September, I would expect the previous all-time high at 123,000 to be taken out within the next week or two. And then we have a clear run into the midpoint where you get the normal rundown for the midpoint decline. And it's in this phase here that we would be expecting to look for clues whether Bitcoin is going to be trying to go into a big blow off top, or if it's going to be labored like this, let's say here, if it goes very slowly into the midpoint and then continues after a midpoint fall, again slowly into the end of the new 60-day cycle, then that will be a very strong clue that this particular 4-year cycle is going to be extended at least into November and December. But if we start getting a blow off top with big moves to the upside, then we need to be aware of that to see whether there is some sort of a conclusion taking place. So very important, the next 2 months. So it's very important to be abreast of all the information available so everybody can make their own mind based on the best information available. And here at Wisdom Bites, we do have a private member section where we do market updates on a daily basis, Monday to Friday at the end of each trading session. And that is the exact purpose of running the private member section, to keep everybody focused on a daily basis so we have the best chance of concluding with the end of the bull market. And I think, judging by some of the comments, people think that we're selling shares in the Bitcoin miners. That is definitely not the case. We do cover the Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin in order to highlight any opportunities with either Bitcoin or the Bitcoin miners. And especially for the Bitcoin miners, we have the ratio trades that we do. And we also run a portfolio for the members to follow. Nobody has to take part in the portfolio. Nobody has to buy anything. The majority of the members use the market update on a daily basis to keep up to date with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners in terms of the news and in terms of what's happening with the price action, etc. So we do 2 videos per week, once on a Wednesday, once on a Friday, and a market update every single day of the week at the end of the trading session. Nobody has to buy anything. But if you are interested in knowing what the ratio trades are, in the description box of the videos, I'm now putting in this particular video called the new members introduction video, which gives an insight and a detail into how the ratio trades work. And the result of the ratio trades from the beginning of 2024, as you can see with the profit and loss, you can see with all these numbers here, the blue numbers are in the profit and the red numbers are in the losses. So we've done about 40 trades and around about 95% of them have been very profitable. We also run a trading portfolio, which we only started in 2024, and that's now up to 481,000. The highest it's been is 726,000 and the lowest it's been is around 300,000. And currently we're at the bottom of the 60-day cycle. And as you can see with Marathon Digital Holdings, the 60-day cycle has given us a pullback which has been deeper than everybody thought. However, at the beginning of the cycle, we had a very big run up and we're now having a pullback. So we should be now getting a big move back up for the Bitcoin miners in the current 60-day cycle. And if this is of interest to you, then all you have to do is, below each of my videos, you'll see the join button here, as well as in the description box with this red button. And if you're interested in keeping abreast of both Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, as well as keeping an eye on the portfolio and the ratio trades, then all that will cost you is just 1 coffee per week, which comes to £12.99. And you can join the growing band of the members in the private member section. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I hope you found value in the video. If you did, then please do remember to like and to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you've got any comments, leave them in the comments below. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.